Welcome back to the deep dive. I have to say, I spent the entire weekend just buried in this massive stack of reports you sent over. We're talking articles, legal filings, FDA statements, and I just kept having the same thought over and over again.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
That if you blinked, you missed it.
That is a very, very fair assessment.
No, serious. We're talking about the single biggest drug category on the planet right now, weight loss, GLP-1s, and for the last 2, maybe 3 years, it's been the absolute Wild West.
It really has. A total gold rush.
You had cowboys, you had rules being made up on the fly, you had these compounding pharmacies popping up on like every street corner. And then in the span of what, 72 hours, the doors just slammed shut.
It really was a regulatory reckoning. I think that's the only way to describe it.
Yeah.
It's Monday, February 9th, 2026. And the world looks completely different today than it did on Friday morning.
It feels like the whole era of the cowboy compounder just hit a brick wall at 100 miles an hour.
It did. And we have so much to unpack here because this stack we're looking at, it covers everything from a spectacular stock market implosion to a brand new government pricing platform that is fundamentally changing the math for everyone.
And we're calling this new era Griffonomics, right? That's the term we're using.
Right, Griffonomics.
Yeah.
Because we're moving from that compounding free-for-all to a consolidated, highly regulated, high volume, but also lower margin game. It's a total pivot.
Okay, but before we get to the government stuff, and I definitely want to talk about that huge event coming up in India next month, we have to start with the story that I think actually broke the camel's back.
The one that kicked it all off?
The rise and the spectacularly fast fall of the $49 pill.
Yes. The HIMS and HERS situation. This is a textbook case of flying way, way too close to the sun.
So let's set the scene for you listening. HIMS and HERS, the telehealth company, they attempted what really looked like a strategic coup. They announced they were launching a compounded oral semaglutide pill.
Which is basically their own generic version of the Wegovy pill.
For $49 a month.
And just to put that price in context, because we deal with these numbers so much we can get numb to them, the brand name price from Novo Nordisk for that same pill was hovering around, what, $150 on the low end to over $1,000.
Easily, depending on your insurance status.
So $49, that's a massive undercut. That is a declaration of war.
It's a price war. Exactly. So they launched this on a Thursday. By Saturday, February 7th, that's literally 2 days later, they pull the product.
Gone.
The website goes dark on that specific page. They withdrew it before, reportedly, selling a single pill. What on earth happened in those 48 hours?
Reality happened. I mean, specifically, scientific and regulatory reality happened. You see, HIMS and HERS was banking on a very specific technology to make this pill work. But to understand why that failed, and frankly why the experts in our research were tearing their hair out, you have to understand the basic biology of these drugs.
Okay, let's do Biology 101 for a second. Why can't I just take the liquid from a Wegovy pen, put it in a capsule and just swallow it?
Because semaglutide is a peptide. It's just a chain of amino acids. And to your stomach, that isn't a miraculous weight loss drug.
It's steak.
It thinks it's food.
Exactly.
Your stomach acid and your enzymes are designed by millions of years of evolution to just rip peptides apart to extract nutrients. So if you just swallow semaglutide, your stomach digests it long before it can ever get into your bloodstream to do its job.
So it becomes expensive urine.
It becomes expensive, exactly. Precisely. It's totally useless.
Okay.
Now, Novo Nordisk, the maker of Wegovy, they knew this. That's why the oral version of their drug was so incredibly hard to make. They spent $1.8 billion, billion with a B, acquiring a company called Hemisphere Technologies.
$1 billion.
Just to get their hands on a specific piece of technology called SNAC.
SNAC, like a snack. SNAC.
SNAC. Salcaprosate sodium. It's a bit of a mouthful. Think of SNAC as a bodyguard. It's this carrier molecule that wraps itself around the semaglutide. It creates a little buffered zone in the stomach to neutralize the acid just locally, and it literally escorts the drug through the stomach lining so it survives.
And that technology is patented.
Heavily.
Oh, it is the crown jewel. It is the only clinically proven way to get oral semaglutide absorbed into the body.
And HIMS. They didn't have the bodyguard.
No, they didn't have SNSE. They were trying to use something called a liposomal delivery system, which they got from a compounding partner named Strive.
I saw that in the press release. Liposomal delivery. It sounds fancy. It sounds really scientific.
It sounds great in marketing copy, doesn't it? Liposomes are basically just tiny fat bubbles. We use them for vitamins, for some other drugs. But here's where the experts in all of our source material just started screaming.
Why?
There is effectively no publicly available clinical trial data proving that this liposomal method actually works for a peptide as large and complex as semaglutide.
They were just guessing. I mean, experts quoted in the articles were saying HIMS was essentially conducting quasi-clinical trials on people.
That is a terrifying phrase for a consumer to hear. Quasi-clinical trials on people. You do not want to be the guinea pig for a $49 pill.
You really, really don't.
Yeah.
And the market realized that this was a complete lose-lose situation. I was reading this note from some Morningstar analysts, and they pointed out what they called the red line. It's a paradox.
What's the paradox?
If this liposomal pill actually worked, if it somehow managed to get the drug into the blood, then it almost certainly infringed on Novo Nordisk's patents.
Right, because the mechanism of getting it across the stomach wall is the protected part.
That's the secret sauce. Exactly. But, on the other hand, if it didn't work,
Then HIMS is selling snake oil.
and that's consumer fraud.
So they were completely trapped. If it works, they get sued. If it doesn't work, they get sued and maybe arrested.
They were trapped. And then the FDA stepped in to seal the deal. On February 6th, the FDA commissioner, Dr. Martin Makary, he released a statement that was, for the FDA, unusually blunt.
He didn't mince words.
Not at all. He said the FDA is taking, and I'm quoting here, decisive steps against illegal copycat drugs.
Okay, this brings us to the whole loophole thing, because for the last few years, all these compounding pharmacies have been operating under this umbrella of a drug shortage, right? That was their whole legal argument.
That's the key mechanism. Under Section 503B of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, if a drug is on the official FDA shortage list, compounding pharmacies are legally allowed to make copies to fill the gap.
Which makes sense. It's a safety valve for the healthcare system.
Of course, if you can't get a life-saving drug, let the local pharmacist make it. It's a good idea in principle.
But the FDA has now changed the status of these drugs.
The FDA has now officially declared that the GLP-1 shortages are resolved. The valve is closed. The party is over.
So the argument that they're just helping out during a shortage is completely dead.
It is completely dead. And the other argument compounders always use is customization.
Yeah.
They say, oh, we aren't mass manufacturing. We're customizing this specifically for this one patient's unique needs.
Which sounds reasonable.
But come on, when you're launching a $49 pill to millions of potential customers with a generic buy now button on a website,
That's not customization.
that is unapproved drug manufacturing. And the FDA just called them on it.
I saw that Scott Gottlieb, the former FDA commissioner, he weighed in on this. And he's usually pretty measured, but he had some very heavy words for HIMS.
He did. And you have to remember, he's on Pfizer's board now, so he sees this from the big pharma industry side too. He warned of potential Department of Justice action, seizures of product, and injunctions.
Wow.
He noted that HIMS and HERS has a reputation for pushing regulatory boundaries, which is a very polite way of saying they constantly skirt the rules. But he basically said they stepped over a cliff this time.
He even suggested that other pharmaceutical companies are going to treat HIMS like a pariah now.
Right. They're not viewed as a good actor in the space anymore. They've burned their bridges with the big players they might need to partner with down the road.
And the fallout was just immediate. HIMS stock tanked. It dropped something like 23%. And Novo Nordisk, they didn't just sit back. They sued HIMS for patent infringement.
And not just any patent infringement. They went after patent 8,129,343.
What's that one?
That's the patent for the active ingredient itself, for semaglutide. It's like the nuclear option of lawsuits. They aren't just sending a cease and desist letter. They are looking for serious damages.
And because HIMS withdrew the product so fast, it looks like a total admission of defeat.
It really does. It just signals that the whole gray market for these drugs, where you could get a compound online without much hassle, is rapidly contracting.
So the fake cheap option crashes and burns spectacularly. But, and this is the incredible twist in the story, just as that cheap compounding option disappears, the official prices for the real stuff are crashing.
Yes.
And this brings us to the second massive story of the last 72 hours. Trump RX.
This is Regulatory Reckoning Part 2. And frankly, this is the bigger story for the long term. President Trump unveiled Trump RX, which is a direct-to-consumer platform.
Yeah.
But it's the mechanism behind it that's so fascinating. It utilizes most favored nation pricing.
MFN. Let's unpack that. I feel like I hear that term in, trade wars with China, not in prescription drug pricing. What does that actually mean for the person listening who just wants to lose some weight?
In international trade, most favored nation status just means you get the best deal that anyone else gets. So applied to drugs, The administration is basically saying to the pharmaceutical companies, look, if you sell Wegovy to the government of France or Japan for $150, you cannot turn around and sell it to uninsured Americans for $1,300.
So we won't pay a single cent more than France pays.
Exactly. The political argument has always been that Americans are subsidizing the research and development for the rest of the world. Trump Rx effectively says, no more.
And the impact on the actual price tag has been staggering. I mean, I'm looking at the screenshots of the platform right here.
It is a price shock. Wegovy prices on the platform dropped from that list price of around $1,350 down to between $149 and $200 a month.
For cash pay patients.
For cash pay patients, which is a huge part of this market.
That completely destroys the entire business model of the compounders. Why in the world would you buy a sketchy $49 pill that might be snake oil when you can get the real FDA-approved brand name stuff for $149?
You wouldn't. It sucks all the oxygen out of the room for the gray market. It essentially forces consolidation around the big approved players.
But you have to ask, and this is the question I kept asking myself while reading through all this, why did the pharma giants agree to this? Why would they do it? Eli Lilly, for example, is playing ball. They agreed to sell Zepbound and their other drugs directly on the platform. Why would they voluntarily slash their own margins?
It was a deal. It was a trade-off.
What was the trade?
The sources say they got a 3-year tariff exemption in exchange for the lower pricing on the platform.
Ah, okay, so you lower the price for the voters before the election, and we will lower the cost of your raw materials coming in from overseas.
That's the deal. Lilly's CEO, David Ricks, he basically admitted as much to CNBC. He said that pricing is going to step down. They are pivoting their entire strategy away from high margin, making a lot of money on each individual pen to high volume.
It's the Walmart model.
It is the Walmart model applied to pharmaceuticals. They are betting that if they drop the price, millions more people will sign up, and they will make up the difference in sheer quantity.
It's fascinating. And it's not just weight loss, though. I was looking through this source material on Trump Rx, and there's this incredible little nugget in there about IVF.
Yes, in vitro fertilization.
I saw that. It kind of got buried under the obesity drug headlines, but this is a huge deal.
It's a massive deal. The Trump Rx platform includes some really deep discounts on fertility drugs. Cetrotide is listed with a 93% discount. Gonal F is 83% off.
And for anyone listening who has gone through IVF or knows someone who has, you know, those drugs are almost never covered by insurance, and they are wildly expensive. We're talking thousands and thousands of dollars a month out of pocket.
Absolutely. This isn't a small thing. We're talking about lowering the total cost of an IVF cycle by about 20% just through these drug savings alone.
That is significant.
It changes the accessibility equation for a lot of families.
Yeah.
And it's a very smart political move, tying family planning and affordability together on one platform.
But of course, not everyone is happy with this platform. I saw critiques from groups like Family USA, and they were calling it a trumped-up catalog of coupons.
Which is a valid critique from a certain perspective. The platform generally benefits the uninsured or the cash pay patient. The catch is, if you're on Medicaid, you are actually ineligible to use these coupons.
Why is that?
Because of anti-kickback statutes.
Yeah.
So the poorest patients, the ones who rely on government aid, might not see this benefit at all. It's kind of a middle-class subsidy, in a way.
And there's a long-term risk here with this whole most favored nation pricing model, right? If the U.S. government demands the lowest global price, how do the pharmaceutical companies react down the line?
They game the system. That's what they always do. The experts we read warn that in the future, companies will just launch their drugs at a higher initial price everywhere else in the world.
To protect the U.S. ceiling.
Exactly. Or they'll delay launching in countries with strict price controls, like in Europe or Australia, so they don't accidentally set a low price cap for the massive U.S. market. It could actually raise global drug prices in the long run.
That is the law of unintended consequences right there. Wow. Okay, so we've got the compounders crashing, and we have the government forcing the brand name prices down. Let's talk about the companies actually making these drugs. It's essentially a two-horse race, right? Eli Lilly versus Novo Nordisk.
It is a duopoly. And right now, Eli Lilly is looking like the dominant horse in that race. Their Q4 2025 revenue was $19.29 billion, which is up 43%. They've captured over 60% of the U.S. GLP-1 market.
60%! That is a massive swing in market share. Novo Nordisk was the first mover with Ozempic. They were the name brand for years. How did they lose the lead so fast?
It comes down to one word: Manufacturing. It sounds boring, but that is where this war was won and lost. Lilly has been incredibly aggressive in building new factories in Alabama, in Pennsylvania, all over Europe. They are winning the volume war.
So they just bet bigger earlier.
They realized early on that demand for these drugs was effectively infinite. So the winner isn't who has the better marketing campaign, it's whoever can physically make the stuff the fastest. And Novo has really struggled to keep up with that pace.
And Novo's guidance for 2026 was pretty grim, wasn't it? I saw their stock took a hit.
It was very grim. They warned their sales and profits could decline by up to 13% this year, mainly because of this new U.S. pricing pressure from Trump Iraqs.
But there was one bright spot for them.
There was. They finally launched an oral version of Wegovy, a legitimate one, using that SNAC technology we talked about, and they got 170,000 patients on it in just 4 weeks.
Wow. That proves people really, really want a pill instead of having to take a shot every week.
Oh, absolutely. It shows the appetite for oral delivery is just massive. But this is where the pipeline wars come in. Because Lilly isn't sitting still. They have a drug called orforglipron coming down the pipe.
Orforglipron, that is a mouthful.
It is. But it is a potential game changer. It's an oral pill. But unlike semaglutide, which is a peptide, orforglipron is a small molecule drug.
Okay, what does that mean for manufacturing? Is it easier?
It means it is much, much easier and cheaper to make. Peptides are like building a complex Lego castle piece by piece. Small molecules are like mass-producing a single plastic brick. If they get that drug approved, they can flood the market even faster and cheaper than anyone else.
And they also have retatrutide in the works.
Retatrutide, this is the triple agonist. This is the Godzilla of weight loss drugs. The data we're seeing on this is just mind-blowing. It's showing an average weight loss of over 70 pounds.
71.2, I think I read.
That's right. And it has all these other benefits for things like osteoarthritis. If Lilly gets these drugs to market, they create this huge technological barrier, a moat, that smaller competitors, and maybe even Novo, will really struggle to overcome.
So Lilly is winning the tech war, and they're winning the volume war. But there is a storm brewing that neither Lilly nor Novo nor the U.S. government can fully control. And for that, we need to look east. We need to talk about the India event.
This is the ticking clock in the background of this whole story. March 2026. Next month.
What exactly happens in March?
Novo Nordisk's core patents on the semaglutide molecule expire in India.
And India is known as the pharmacy of the world for a very good reason.
A very good reason. India has this massive, sophisticated, and incredibly aggressive generic drug industry. You have these giants like Dr. Reddy's, Cipla, Biocon, OneSource, and they are all sitting on the starting line, engines revving, just waiting for the clock to strike midnight in March.
They're ready to go right now.
Oh, they are more than ready. OneSource is investing $100 million to ramp up capacity as we speak. Biocon just commissioned a massive new facility in Bengaluru specifically for this. Pharmaxil, which is India's Pharmaceutical Export Council, literally released a statement saying, and I quote, "There will be a bombardment of this product the moment the patent expires."
Bombardment. That is not a subtle choice of words.
He is not. They are going to flood the zone with cheap generic semaglutide.
What does this do to the price? I mean, globally.
It collapses it.
Yeah.
We're seeing credible projections of generic semaglutide coming out of India for $40 to $77 a month.
$40.
Compare that to the U.S. list price of over $1,000, or even the newly discounted Trump RX price of $149. It is a tiny fraction of the cost.
Now, obviously, they can't just ship those pills to a CVS in America the next day. The patents here in the U.S. are still valid for a few more years.
That's true. But borders become very porous when price disparities are that high. If a drug costs $1,000 in New York and $40 in Mumbai, you create a massive, massive incentive for medical tourism.
You mean people literally flying to India just to pick up a prescription?
Absolutely. For a year's supply of the drug, the savings would more than pay for the plane ticket and a nice vacation. Plus, you create this enormous gray market for mail-order drugs. We saw this exact same thing happen with hepatitis C drugs years ago. People will find a way to get the $40 version.
And India itself is a huge market, right? This isn't just for export.
It's the diabetes capital of the world, unfortunately. They are projected to have 450 million overweight adults by the year 2050. So these Indian companies have this massive domestic population to test and refine their products on.
So they'll perfect the manufacturing at scale there first.
Exactly. They'll drive the cost down even further, and then they'll be ready to export to the rest of the developing world immediately. It effectively sets a new global floor for the price of these drugs that the big players can't ignore.
It just feels like the dam is breaking from every single side. You have regulatory pressure closing the loopholes, you have government pricing forcing the brands down, and now you have this generic flood coming from India. But I want to pivot now because we've been talking about economics, we've been talking about stock prices and supply chains. But there is a section in this deep dive stack that often gets lost in all the financial noise.
The hidden costs.
The hidden costs, exactly. We treat these drugs like a miracle cure. We look at the stock price and the weight loss numbers. But there are these other costs that don't show up on a corporate balance sheet.
The biological and the environmental costs. This is the part of the deep dive where, honestly, we have to be the buzzkill, but it's crucial context for this whole story.
Let's start with the biology. Because the marketing pitch, the dream is, I take the shot, I lose the weight, I'm cured, I'm done.
And the data says, absolutely not. There was a study from Oxford Research that is frankly terrifying for anyone looking for a quick fix. It found that when you stop taking GLP-1s, you regain the weight 4 times faster than if you had just used traditional diet and exercise alone.
4 times faster. That's not a rebound, that's a slingshot effect.
It is. And it's not just the weight. Patients in these studies report this terrible hunger returning with a vengeance. One patient in the study described it as, it was like something opened up in my mind and just said, eat everything, you deserve it.
So the food noise.
The food noise.
Yeah.
That constant mental chatter about food that the drug quiets down, it comes back louder than it ever was before.
Why does that happen? Is your body fighting back?
Essentially, yes. Your body's set point, its internal thermostat for weight, thinks it has been starving for a year. So the moment that drug suppression lifts, your biology goes into overdrive to restock the shelves, so to speak.
And what about all the other health benefits? The lower blood pressure, the better cholesterol.
Gone. The term that researchers are starting to use is metabolic erasure. Within about 1.4 years of stopping the drug, all of those wonderful metabolic improvements completely disappear. It's as if you never took the drug in the first place.
So practically speaking, these are forever drugs.
Yeah.
Once you start, you can't really stop without crashing and losing all the benefits.
That is the subscription model of the human body. And that leads directly to the second hidden cost, the environmental crisis. Because if 100 million people need to take this drug every single week for the rest of their lives, we have to make billions and billions of doses. And making peptides is an incredibly dirty business.
I was reading about this toxic footprint section, and I had no idea. I think most people imagine drug manufacturing as being very clean, people in white lab coats, sterile rooms.
That is the image they sell you. The reality of peptide synthesis is basically chemical warfare. It uses a process called solid-phase peptide synthesis, or SPPS. And to put it simply, imagine you are building a complex Lego tower. But to add just one single brick, you have to wash the entire tower in a bath of toxic chemicals. That's essentially the process over and over again.
The numbers in the report are just staggering.
They are. Manufacturing semaglutide alone generates about 123 million pounds of toxic solvent waste every single year.
123 million pounds.
They use chemicals like dimethylformamide, which is essentially paint stripper. They use polystyrene beads that don't biodegrade. It's an environmental nightmare.
And that's just right now before the volume really ramps up with things like a cheap oral pill for everyone.
Precisely. The chemical intensity for making peptides is about 45 times higher than for typical small molecule drugs. Researchers at the University of Melbourne are calling it an environmental catastrophe in the making. They're trying to develop water-based synthesis methods, but those are completely unproven at scale. Right now, we are solving a metabolic crisis by creating a massive ecological one.
It's a heavy realization. We're fixing our bodies by, in a way, poisoning the planet.
It's a trade-off that we haven't really reckoned with yet as a society. We're so focused on getting the drug to the people, we aren't asking where all the waste goes.
Okay, before we wrap this up, we have to touch on the last legal stand that's happening. While Novo is suing HIMS, the compounders are trying to fight back using a different tactic, antitrust laws.
Right. Strive Compounding, which you'll remember was HIMS' partner for that failed $49 pill, has filed antitrust suits against both Lilly and Novo. They're alleging a coordinated effort by the duopoly to crush them.
What's the argument? They won't let us play in their sandbox.
Basically, yes. They claim Lilly and Novo are forcing telehealth providers into these exclusive deals, essentially saying, if you want access to our official Wegovy or Zepbound, you have to contractually ban all compounded versions from your platform.
And Strive is saying, that's illegal collusion.
They're arguing it cuts off personalized medicine and is designed to keep prices at what they call super competitive levels.
Is it a legitimate David versus Goliath battle? Do they have a shot?
It is David versus Goliath, but in this case, David walked into the arena with a slingshot that very likely didn't work. The fact that the liposomal pill was so scientifically dubious really hurts their moral high ground. It's hard to argue you're being unfairly blocked from the market when the product you tried to sell might not have even been effective in the first place.
It feels like a Hail Mary pass at the end of a game they've already lost.
It definitely does. They are trying to use the courts to win a battle that they already lost in the lab and with the FDA.
So let's bring it all home. We started this deep dive in the Wild West, and you're saying we've now entered the era of Griffonomics. What is the final summary of this massive pivot?
The summary is consolidation. The gray market, the HIMS and HERS of the world, the pop-up online compounders, that market is contracting, and fast. The FDA and the patent lawyers are closing all the loopholes. The incumbents, Lilly and Novo, are winning, but the game has changed for them too.
How so?
They have to play by the government's rules now. They're being forced to pivot to this high-volume, lower-margin business model aided by platforms like Trump or X. The gold rush margins are over.
So if you're an investor betting on telehealth disruption in this space,
I would be very bearish. HIMS looks like it's in serious trouble. They proved they're a great marketing company, but not a science company. And in this space, the science just won.
And if you're betting on sheer pharmaceutical volume,
I think you have to be bullish. The demand is nearly infinite, the price is finally coming down to a more accessible level, and the factories are being built as fast as humanly possible.
But there is that lingering thought, that provocative thought to end on.
It's the thing that keeps me up. We are so focused on the price war. Is it $49? Is it $149? Is it $40 in India? We're obsessed with the cost. But we are totally ignoring the forever drug problem.
The biological trap.
The biological trap and the environmental one. If the biology dictates that you can never stop taking this drug without crashing, and the environment can't sustain the toxic waste of making it for hundreds of millions of people forever, are we really solving a health crisis? Or are we just creating a brand new and maybe even bigger dependency crisis, one that's tethered to ecological destruction?
That is the question for the next decade. Risk defined, portfolio protected. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time.